everybody. Hi.
Hi.
Welcome to Authortubers React. I hope everybody is having a great Saturday and avoiding any terrible weather. We have sunshine here, so we feel a little lucky. We are going to be talking about today. On this one, we'll be doing Jess Owens, reacting to Jess Owens' videos. Stop doing these things. Which I thought it was adorable. And then if we have time, we'll do some extra bonus stuff. And then if you would like to join us next on Twitch, right after this, we will be reacting to Jenna Moressi's 10 lies that we were told when we joined the writing community. So hopefully we'll have a couple of good episodes for you guys. I have a couple of co-hosts with me. I think if you're in our writing community, you probably know them. And of course, my regular co-hosts. We're going to go around starting with Zara. Everybody go ahead and introduce yourselves. Let the people know who you are and where you can be found.
Hi, my name is Zara Hoffman. I'm the self-published author of 6 books, a young adult paranormal romance trilogy and a new adult sci-fi romance trilogy. I just finished my master's in publishing at NYU, walked across the stage on Thursday, so very excited.
Oh, wow.
And I am now the publisher of Inimitable Books, which is dedicated to uplifting marginalized voices without forcing authors to write about their trauma.
Very good. Congrats, Sarah.
Thank you.
Yeah, totally.
So exciting. My name is Charliee, and I like to make videos about writing and journaling. And that's pretty much it. But yeah.
I think I can go next, Barrett. Hi, I'm Michael. And yeah, I do the normal live streaming things here on Authortube. And also, actually, my write-a-thon, Writertown Garlosia is coming up pretty soon. It's probably about 5 weeks away right now. So that'll be the weekend of the 2nd of July. I have actually, even though I'm not so, I get lots of jokes about being old and whatnot and being not so good with the tech, but I have made a post on Instagram about it. So you can check that out if you like on my Instagram. And yeah, stay tuned for updates, etc. on that. Totally.
Hi, I'm JC, author JC Carpenter here on YouTube. I do writing blogs and other writerly things on my channel. I post videos on Mondays and Thursdays. I have live streams now on Wednesdays from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And yeah, I'm forgetting everything else. So Barrett.
Outro.
Yes.
Are you muted there, Barrett?
Muted.
Take 2.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Barrett Laurie. I talk about my journey to traditional publishing. I write stories about ordinary queer kids living extraordinary lives. I host Critique Group Live every second Thursday of the month. We have a writing competition coming up starting June 1st. $100 top prize for poetry and $100 top prize for flash fiction. There will be a video about that coming out this week. I also have a book launch for Martin Lejeune's book, The McMurdo Rift, coming up Monday. So look for that Monday. And I'm excited to be here. This is going to be fun.
All right, awesome. And you are here on my channel. I'm Nia, the Vixen of Fiction on YouTube, Twitch, and you can follow my Ko-fi that I now have going, and I'm trying to remember to keep updated. Thank you, Zara, our Ko-fi ambassador, who's keeping us on track, trying to get us our marketing stuff done and done right, because some of us are really, really bad at it. Some people are much better at it.
I don't know about that.
I'm not in that camp.
I know how to make an Instagram post.
That's good.
Like, I'm just so bad at marketing myself. Like, I love talking about other people. I'm like, oh,
Yes.
so has something going on. And they're like, Maya's like, can you do that for yourself? I'm like,
I know what to do for marketing, and like I knew before I took classes, and then I took classes, and then I still haven't done it for myself. I always
You
tell
didn't
other
pull out your
people to do
books.
Oh yeah, you didn't even hold out the books today, Zara, or
Do
talk
I need
about
to
the
pull out-
wonderful podcast.
Okay, well, first of all, I've been at my mom's place, so I don't have my copies of my books here anymore.
Oh.
because I brought them all to my place, but I will fix that.
Yeah, you gotta leave at least one set
Yeah,
there.
And then
make mom buy the box set.
Charlie reminded me that I forgot to mention that I'm the co-creator, co-host, and editor of the Writish podcast with Kelly Wright.
Yes.
So good.
So guys, are you guys ready to jump into it? Because we're gonna do an hour on here, then we're gonna take a break and hop over to Twitch, and we'll have a little bit more time. So I saw this video like 3 weeks ago, well, probably right after just posted it. I'm like, yes, please do it. Stop doing these things. Why? And it's funny because I thought, oh, we're all going to just agree on this. And JC's like, oh, first thing. Oh,
the
good.
First one of all the ones.
What?
Yep, I'm so sorry.
I want to hear the logic.
You already heard it.
I need to hear it more.
I have not heard it. I would like to hear it.
We need to hear it
Well,
publicly.
we need to tell them what the first thing is because everyone might not have seen the video.
That's our bonus topic. Barrett put a topic on for Critique Group Live. If you guys have not, or on his Facebook page, if you're not a part of that community, it's such a great community. And he'll post all kinds of hot topics. So I snagged a bonus from Barrett's channel, or Barrett's Facebook. So on the topic of the writing community has got to stop doing these things. And I'll tell you why. One of the reasons why I have my opinion, audiobooks do not count as reading. I don't agree. Audiobooks equals reading. All right. So we can go around and let everybody go ahead and give their general opinion, and then we can chat about it.
I hate this so much. I'm not actually an audiobook reader yet. I have how do I say this politely without pissing off people who are audiobook narrators?
Someone's gonna get pissed off.
Canceled here.
It's very hard for me to find an audiobook narrated by someone whose voice I like long enough to listen to it. Even if and as someone with ADHD, I also like to put it on double speed, and it's hard to find voices that sound good at that, even if they sound okay at normal speed.
Okay.
That said, obviously I really like Colin Clark's voice, and I love my audiobook narrator who did the Belgrave Legacy, the first book in my young adult paranormal romance trilogy, and is doing the second one as we speak. But it's really hard for me to get into it. So normally what I see are books where it's like this actor who I've seen do other things is reading this classic, and I'm like, oh, I want to do that, but I'm not an Audible member, so I'm also not going to shell out that amount of money. But so even though I'm not an audiobook reader or listener or whatever you want to call it, if you know what the book is about because you got from the beginning to the end, even if you only listen to it, you've still read the book.
Okay.
Yeah, and by the definition of read, maybe not reading, but the definition of read, that counts. So, Charlie?
Well, shall we just go ahead and jump into my spicy?
For that same reason, I would say that audiobooks technically don't count as reading because they're not any written text, but I do count audiobooks as reading because as a student, I spend so much time with printed textbooks that I just don't read for fun. Plus, it's still fun. Like, I don't say, oh, I'm like, what do you say? Oh, I'm listening right now. I'm done listening. Like, that's just kind of boring. That can be anything, right? So yeah, I still count audiobooks. And okay, slightly off topic, but very quickly, I recently was on a live stream where we talked about this book called Shadow of the Fox. And then I downloaded it as an audiobook, and the narrator sucked. Because the main character, every time she like screamed, because it's a fantasy book, it was like a whisper. But apart from that, I love the series.
I feel like you should stay away from audiobooks of books that have shadow in the title, because I also hated the narrator for Shadow and Bone. Couldn't do it.
Yeah, but I still finished it. I finished it.
Annoyed at that part. JC is holding it. One more, and then we're at you, Michael.
And you can unleash.
I can chime in first.
Unleashing.
Yeah, audiobooks to me are reading, etc. I will say that, like, what I'll say to chime in is I really feel like it's a different, brain function, really. So, like, let's say you've got a book, reading it versus listening to it. Even though I'd count the listening as reading it, it's going to, like, if you're not used to listening to audiobooks, it's going to take some getting used to because it's a different brain function. You're listening to the story versus, reading it. And it's different, the story kind of goes, the show goes on with or without you, like if you're tired, and the words are kind of going in one ear and coming out the other, that the story, it still goes on, right? And it's kind of like a bus or something. It's like you're either going to catch it or you're going to miss it. But with more like reading on paper, it's like if you're a bit tired, whatever, you can slow down a bit if you want, or if you realize, oh, I just spaced out for one line or 5-6 seconds or whatever it is, you can just go back a bit, and it's a lot more convenient like that. So you can kind of like be more thorough. Maybe you can kind of make sure you catch everything, and it helps, to see how certain names, especially in fantasy, are spelled out and and whatnot. It can be tough if you're listening to know how something's spelled out. But yeah, that's kind of my take on it. But yeah, it counts. JC?
Go for it, JC.
I think I might just keep my comments.
No, you are not the first person.
And you won't be the last.
And I already feel judged.
No.
Okay, it's okay. You are not the first person. Someone who's usually in our chat was right there with you before. So
I am one of those people who, Morgan, I'm sorry, I am very literal about the word reading. Technically, and I got screenshots. Reading is the process of looking at a series of written symbols and getting meaning from them. Written symbols, emphasis on written. Reading is a multifaceted process involving word recognition, comprehension, fluency, and motivation. Emphasis on word recognition. You can't read in the audiobook. And it's just the action and skill of reading written and printed material silently or aloud. Reading is, by definition, reading words on a page. Now, if you tell me you listen,
what about on a screen?
If you tell me you listened to a book, okay, I can accept that. But to tell me you read an audiobook, by definition, you did not read an audiobook. It was read to you. You listened to someone reading it, but you did not read it. Your words were not on a page, reading the symbols and words put together to form the book. And
so let me just ask a couple of questions. Speaking of the receipts, can we go to slide number 2 and reread slide number 2 to me again, just so then we can discuss from that? Because I think we're going to take an originalist and a more broad discussion. And so
I also want to go back and quickly clarify that I took this as, if you listen to the audiobook, can you say that I read the book as in you've consumed it, not I literally read the book.
Yeah.
Because that's the definition of read.
I guess my thing is the way people phrase it. If I was to tell someone, if I was to list out all the books that I consumed or whatever, last year, I listened to Atomic Habits. I didn't read it. I
would prefer to say I listened to a book, but I think if someone told me I read this book, and then they're like, yeah, the audiobook was great, I'd be like, okay.
For me, it's just about the phrasing of you telling someone you read this book when you listened to it. You didn't read it. I have nothing against, audiobooks aren't for me, but I don't have anything against people, listening to audiobooks. It's just about the phrase, I read this book. No, you listened to this book. You did not read it because you did not read the words on a page.
Yeah. So there are other definitions.
Well, and let me ask.
Are read. Well, go ahead, Barrett. You go first.
Let me just ask 2 questions.
That's different.
Because yes, and I want to hear. I just want to. Because JC, and this is no way an attack. I just want to ask in a friendly way. Is there any way in the way you said that you could understand that if someone was at all unable to physically read, how the way the word being so much emphasis on the exact definition, how that can feel a little bit like you're excluding a group of people who maybe wouldn't have any other way to consume it. And if they were to say that, and some kid in a room were to jump up and say, but you didn't, because we all know, like, a kid would think of a literal, right? Like, they'd be in that mindset. And so if they stood up to an adult who that was the way they read and said that to them, is there any part of you that would see the sting of that, and how the more broad approach tends to be more inclusive than slicing out individual things to more exclude?
Yes, I was going to say, well, yes. To answer your question in a broad manner, yes, I see that how that comes across for someone who's, visually impaired.
Visually impaired, yeah.
Right, and this, I don't have anything against audiobooks. It's just the phrasing of whatever. But this is why I don't typically say what my opinion is on audiobooks unless I'm asked my opinion. So because we're in the forum where it's being asked,
right? Yeah.
But otherwise, I've been in conversations where people, talk about audiobooks, and I've never shared my opinion because I know it's not shared broadly, and that would be very offensive or hurtful to those who are visually impaired. I'm only sharing my opinion now because that is
that's the topic.
Well,
but I wouldn't share it just
like you wouldn't just insert
something.
I also wanted to point out that people who are visually impaired, there's also Braille and other things.
Yes.
That they
technically Braille, by that definition,
is reading.
Doesn't count.
It doesn't.
Because you're not seeing it.
You're not
on
seeing
a page.
it.
You're feeling it.
So see, that's.
I mean, I think the best way to do it all is to say you consumed a book.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just say I finished it.
Share my opinion.
I just finished it. And then it goes into my book journal because it was published.
And so really quick, I'm going to say, because technically I agree that is the technical definition. If you look at it from Oxford, that's the definition. But then when you look up the definition of read or read, not reading, so then you get a lot more things, and it has more to do with intaking it. You can intake it by listening, and there's 7 or 8 definitions, but some of it is audio, auditorily taking it in and receiving it and understanding it. Then you've read it. Being understood when you speak. I read you loud and clear. You didn't read me. I'm not words on a page. You know what I'm saying? So there are more definitions to read and read than there are to that very specific definition of reading. So a lot of times I'll say I'm listening to an audiobook, but when I'm done, because I simultaneously read and listen, I'll flip back and forth because I'm one of those people who cannot read all the time. If I could only depend on when I could look at pages to read, then I would almost never read because my eyes just can't tolerate staring at words for that long of a time. I'm prone to migraines. I have some nerve damage, and it's not possible. And I'm also slightly dyslexic. And I'm also one of those kids who even though I didn't know I was dyslexic, I knew I had trouble reading very early on, and I didn't know why, because I loved to read. When my teachers would read to us, I could follow along very easily. That is one of the reasons why audiobooks don't bother me. I can take in audiobooks just as well as I can take in a regular physical book, because I coped from a very young age, not knowing what dyslexia was till my senior year of high school. By then it was too late, and I was a 4.0 student. So I just coped. And I used to tell people I have a narrator in my head. So when I'm reading, a narrator is almost like, because I can visually see the page, the narrator is almost like reading a word ahead of me. So when I see a word backwards, before I can say it wrong, the narrator already has corrected it. I don't know if this makes sense. It's a coping mechanism, because I'll read a word backwards and I read stuff out of order. But because someone's narrating it to me in my head, they catch that that's not the right word. That's not the right order. The narrator in my head is catching it before I do. So if I'm just reading out loud, you'll hear me make those flubs more often than I do when I'm reading in my head, because then I become the narrator. And I don't know exactly. Well, I think it started probably at second grade when I realized, ooh, I'm struggling to read these things. What can I do? I started hearing my teacher's voice, the teacher who would read to me all the time. I started hearing her voice in my head, reading the story ahead. Yeah. So it was a coping mechanism, but I also learned very early on to listen and input it the same way that I see it, or the same way that's written, if that makes sense. I'm in my 40s. We didn't have lots of stuff back in the 80s.
Can we bring up Richard's comment about Braille real quick? Because I do want to drive this home while we're discussing it. So here's my thing, Richard. What's the difference? Why is Braille different? And I think the reason Braille is different is because it makes you feel more icky about the stance. And I'm going to go ahead and push that button and say there's a reason it feels icky. It's because you are excluding people. And to go back to the audiobook thing that Nia just said, I've talked before about Ricky being dyslexic. Part of the reason he never liked to read or do school was because kids told him he didn't read books because he had to listen to books on tape back then. And that kind of exclusion does hurt. And just because one makes you feel icky should be the thing inside of you that tells you, wait a minute, maybe my thought process here and digging my heels in is icky in more way than just this one. So because technically you're not seeing it with Braille, you're feeling it.
Yep.
So again, if there's a reason that those two things are different, I'm on board. But otherwise, I'm going to pick up the ick factor. Love ya. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why when people tell me I'm just going by the technical definition, then I'm like, okay, well, if you're just going, then that is what it is.
Totally
That's what it says. Totally look it up. Boom, there it is. But if you, like I said, which is why I go by the definition of read and read, which includes many more auditory styles of being read or of reading, but it's read or read. And so that way I can have a technical definition to come back at, but even without that, I would still include it. And not just because I was one of those children, because I would force myself to read, even if it caused me to have blaring migraines. I would still force myself because I couldn't be one of those kids, unfortunately, who was picked on, because it was not fun. It's not fun to not be able to read.
Well, and Ricky went the other way. His grades were terrible until he got to college and then figured out he was dyslexic because he went to a tiny school in Illinois that didn't have any special, reading programs or anything. So he just thought he was dumb, which is something that we still struggle with. Yeah. And it goes back to, and that's why I said kids when I was talking to JC, because that's where it rooted in him, was when he was like kindergarten in first grade, when he fell behind and they gave him Teddy Rumpskin and books on tape. Yes. That's all they had in like mid 1980s, because we're that old. And kids made fun of him that he wasn't reading. And so that's why I think that one hits me in the craw. And I was glad to see Jess Owens go, I'm over it, because that's the reason I don't like it. It's just for the harm factor. So,
and I think I'm going to say, I think one of the reasons why, because I don't think that most people would care, but I think one of the reasons why it became a big deal in the bookish side of the community is because a lot of people are listening to these books on audiobooks, and they're like, I read 40 books, I read 50 books a month, and people are like, how in the world are you possible? And they can, one of the girls I like, Bethany, she can read on or listen to the audiobook at 1.5, and then she'll say, I read this book. And you know what I mean? And that people were getting a lot of trolls telling them that's not reading, that's, so I think that's where some of that came from within the on YouTube community and Twitter and Instagram and blah, is that a lot of people were doing the audiobooks and then saying, oh, I read all these books. Because even me, if I read 4 books in a month, half of what I read is through audio.
Oh no, I think over the last week, I finished 4 books and they were all audiobooks because I love to journal. So I'm just sitting there journaling and listening to my audiobook, but you can't read while you journal because your hands are doing 2 different things. But yeah, and I also think it also came up because people came out and said, this is against this is ableism. So, and then, you know, people start getting defensive when you start calling other people different things and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I think
I will say I mean, if you want to listen to audiobooks because you're dyslexic, like that's awesome. I hope you are finding audiobooks that the narrator doesn't annoy you, like I've been running into. There is a font called Open Dyslexic that you can use on your computer if you would like to use things. Apple Books does not have it as an option, but the Kindle app does. I'm assuming at this point that the physical Kindles do too, although I don't think I've held a physical Kindle since 2010, so I am not the authority on that. But I have the Kindle app on my iPhone. So I did drop the link to that here. It's how I write my books now, because I don't think I have dyslexia, but I have dyscalculia, which is flat with numbers. And while I'm not like putting a ton of numbers into my novel, it is easier on my eyes, which means I have less eye strain, and I also get migraines and things like that. But when I have a migraine, I can't listen to anything, even less than I can see things, which is why I probably haven't gotten into audiobooks like other people. But yeah, I just wanted to share this link. It comes up every so often in a live stream that I'm on or hosting myself. And I think it's a wonderful thing that people should know about.
Yeah. Is it also on the app like Libby and Overdrive? Do you know?
I briefly used those apps, and then it was like, your login is invalid, and I haven't fixed that. So I don't remember. I would hope so, but I don't remember, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I think it's a good conversation to have, because for me, it's never about, you know, I don't want anyone on either side to like feel bad or you know what I mean? It's just that we have our notions and we have ideas, and some people are just like, I must stick to strict definitions. I have a son like that who likes this is what this means though, and I'm like, okay, yes, that's what that means. But you know what I mean? So it's not about that, but it's about opening the conversation, and that way we know that when we see something, not necessarily that we should just like go on people's videos and just be like, you didn't read those, you only listen to them on audio. And it's just like, why? Just if you don't want to listen to their reading wrap up, just keep scrolling. There's more videos to watch, you know?
Yeah, and at the end of the day, the word reading wrap up is way catchier than finishing wrap up.
Yeah.
So
audio kind of listen, kind of sort of
or audible alliteration, because wrap up obviously does not start with an R. So
yeah, it sounds good together. So I'm not going to get on and like, okay, so I just finished when I just finished Daughter of the Moon Goddess. I'm not going to say I technically read these chapters and this percentage this percentage on audiobook, these many chapters. I'm like, I'm not going to do. I read the book. You know, I just like, nobody wants to do that. So many good comments in that.
Great. And Richard's follow-up point about how that's the most accessible to him, that makes perfect sense. And and again, and same with JC, not to tear down the definition. That's where my brain went, and where I would sit now for an adult, you know, definitely, you know the difference. And if you feel like if an adult's saying that to you, that's silly, 100% get what you're saying. If some kid's saying it, like, let them talk. Like, they read the book. Yeah. Good for you. I'm happy you did.
I mean, for me, people always, especially in my publishing program, which I loved, but I got so much flack for mostly reading on ebook. And I actually don't use...
I've heard this too. This is crazy.
And I don't use the Open Dyslexic font in it, because most of my fiction reading is actually in Apple books, and then my nonfiction reading is now almost exclusively Kindle books. Don't ask me why that happened. Anyway, I use it because I can I can turn the brightness down. I can make it white font on top of black, which I actually know that for some visually impaired people, that's worse. But for me, it's better. It prevents me from getting a migraine because there's less brightness on the screen. It also absolutely lets me completely wreck my sleep schedule, you know, reading late at night. So probably that was the thing I missed most about having most of my reading collection in paper, because I actually had to put it away. Although as a kid, I read with the flashlight under my blanket, so it wasn't that much better. But like for me, I get the definition, and I am normally a stickler like that because that's how my grandma was, and I drive my family crazy when I used to be as like adamant about it as my grandma. So I stopped doing that. But I think we can all agree that the most important thing is that you are taking in stories and hopefully enjoying them and then sharing your thoughts about them. Or authors always want to review. I'm so bad about doing that. And I love watching people talk about books because I'm like, oh, maybe I'll read it. And then that's a lie to myself because my TBR is never shrinking. But it's like, I don't care how you did it. I do in the back of my head always have the, oh, did you read it? If you listen to it on audiobook, and then I'm very quick to be like, but does it matter? Because like they can obviously talk about it and I can't, which is why I'm here, because I want to hear what they think.
Yeah, I think Savian's comment about alternative reading. See, I get all of that. But I also think like if you're on the side that, you know, says, oh well, it's not, if you don't count it as reading, then you're being an ableist, then you could say alternative reading is also pejorative because it sounds like it's not reading. But then it's like, how else do you distinguish between audiobooks and normal books in the context of like when you have to categorize them?
Yeah.
And I think that's also a thing to think about. And then something Zara said made me like jump because I had something that I wanted to say off of that, but I totally forget. So
Oh no! Like we
I
need
love
to
that
have
you
your
always
notepads
remember
out.
that you had the point, but then you'll have forgotten the point. That's my favorite. You're like, I had a great thing, and then I forgot it because we got to talk about something else.
Yeah, I
When
had
it comes
one
back
too.
around, you can be like,
no,
you noted like stop talking so that like it doesn't disappear again.
Yeah.
No, I was so entranced in what you were saying that I totally forgot what I wanted to say in agreement with your point, or I don't know.
You make
So at least you can.
You're acting as if what I say is like so interesting. I'm like, I'm talking like no filter. Like I don't know what happened. I hope it was good.
She's like, I don't remember what I said.
I was like, I know I didn't make a fool of myself in what I wanted to say, but did I in the execution?
Oh, I just remembered mine about physical books versus ebooks. I remember when ebooks were becoming a big thing. Yeah, we got that a lot because I was like, yes, I can take this one e-reader everywhere with me. And people will be like, well, that's not a real book. And I'm just like, it's the same thing. But look, I've got like 20 books and you have one. Or unless you're carrying a stack. So I'm like, I don't get it. Like, what?
You know what? I think I remember my point now.
I thought so.
Oh,
Yes,
the plot
Love
thickens.
your memory.
Go for it.
it wasn't actually all that amazing, so we can skip me anyways.
That part.
So this is true,
True.
but I don't know if that would help with dyslexia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like it wouldn't.
Wait, before Charlie forgets.
Oh, did Charlie think of it?
I did,
Oh,
but it
she-
wasn't. It was
She said
just me
to realize
talking about
Yeah.
audiobook.
She waved it.
Talking about ebooks and stuff. So yeah.
Oh,
I heard the oh never mind, but I didn't realize that
okay.
was about the thing that you remembered. So
Yeah, let's stay on topic. I will not be the cause for off-topicness.
you mentioned earlier about self-pub authors doing this. I think it would be great if it became a regular practice.
But
It probably won't because
Yeah.
traditional publishing takes for freaking ever. But now I will be doing this with my publishing company.
Mhm.
I've been thinking about it and I just hadn't fully decided yet, although why, I don't know why. And then I don't know what you mean by an overlay, but that sounds really awesome.
How do you make a dyslexic-friendly book?
So you would use a font that is weighted in a certain way. So there is Comic Sans, which people who don't have dyslexia like absolutely hate the look of, but the way it's
Shape.
the type font has been made, it does something where it doesn't flip as much for people with
Oh.
dyslexia. And
P's
then
and Q's and G's and things, and N's, rotating Z's, W's, M's, things like that will catch some of us. Even when I'm writing, sometimes I'll go like this. That's how my teacher found out I had dyslexia. And then she went back and checked my papers and realized that I have it worse with numbers in random order. Why I was doing so bad in algebra was because she's like, you would get the right answer. And then when you go over to A, B, C, or D, you pick the wrong one. I'm like,
Right.
Because they'll flip two numbers. So, but I was at the board and I don't know if I was trying to write a 2 or something. I was like, which way does it go on the board? And she saw me doing this, and she had just found out that she had dyslexic and had also coped. And so when she saw me doing it, went back to my papers, recognized what was happening, and said, come here, we need to have a talk.
Interesting. Okay, I did not know.
And
that
if you go
other
to
kinds
this
like that.
website, you'll see how the letters are weighted there. So it's not as uniform as Comic Sans is, but you'll see that like the bottom of each letter is thicker or in some way bolder than the top part of the letter.
Mhm.
Interesting.
Amazing how they figured that out too, huh?
Yeah. Like the littlest thing can just help so much.
Yeah.
So yeah. Do we have so many good comments in the chat? It takes me a minute moving comments also. I have to like stop.
I think we've covered a lot of them. There was some talking in between and more talk about dyslexia. And then taking the example of like what counts for other things where I don't think there was necessarily a 1-to-1 correlation. But there is a lot of like ableism things where it's like, is it ableism or is it not? And I don't know if we need to keep talking about that. But
we can beat that to death.
Yeah, I don't see anything else about an opinion one way or the other. I think it's a lot more about the things we've brought up about.
Yeah. So if anybody still has any issues with it or needs a definition to solidify that in their mind, look up some of the definitions for read and read, and that should help you understand that you don't have to take it in visually. There are things that do happen visually when you read those words. It's a lot of technical stuff that I'm just like, I don't want to talk about all the technical stuff that happens when you do take in something visually versus when you take in things auditorily. But there are some of us who can take it in that way because we've been doing it for so long that it does the same thing. And they say by a certain age, it's pretty much the same anyway. It's just a matter of getting used to it. And so if you're not for everybody, for some people, it's a matter of getting used to it. Some people will never be able to get used to it because we're all different. We all take in information and learn differently. So look up some of the different definitions under read and read, and you'll understand that you don't have to see it visually to have read something.
If anyone is watching this who isn't a native English speaker or learned it just by speaking and not reading text, read and read, same verb, one is present tense and one is past tense, but the important thing is that it's spelled the same. So R-E-A-D.
Yes.
If you are looking it up.
Thank you, Zara.
Did we have any disagreements on the other 3 on the list? I thought the other 3 were pretty straightforward.
Yeah, we can just talk about them.
Like
we can
Black
just talk about
romance
them.
could not be.
Let's go through.
Yeah.
Label romance right. Black romance. So I guess this has been a problem where people have been labeling things Black romance and it's interracial or multicultural, and people pick it up looking for Black love or Black romance and like, one of these people is not Black. What's happening here?
It's kind of, I think it's kind of like that own voices thing that people like will mislabel too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just not getting what you thought you paid for.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's the same in the LGBTQ corner of things, because I think that there were some people who were upset at one point where if somebody was bisexual and then they put them in a heterosexual relationship, they're like, does that count? And I'm like, it still counts, I think, if the person's, it's just that's one section.
Bi people can be in heterosexual relationships. Let's just get that out there. They're still on the queer spectrum. They're still
Yeah.
part
So
of
I
the
think it's just
super cool rainbow flag. Like,
yeah. So I think it's just read the back, find out what you're getting into, so that you'll know, because it's a spectrum. So find out what it is that if you're looking for only one thing, you know, make sure that that's the thing that you're getting. Or if you're open to all of the things, then it won't matter, because you're like, oh, okay.
So wait, so okay, interesting question. So then are you more of read the back or change the label? Because to me, I see this.
I don't think you need to change the label, and it's not for me to say though, because I'm not in the LGBTQIA plus.
No, I mean this specific
for
one.
Black romance.
Yeah.
Oh, for Black romance, yeah, label it right. Specifically,
Okay,
because it is a thing. Interracial romance is a thing. So go ahead and call
that
it that.
is its own category and
Yes.
its own
Okay.
tag.
I just wanted to make sure. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you should know what you should be communicating the accurate idea, like without the person or the browser even having to open the book, in other words.
Exactly.
Yep.
How about the cover one? Because this one more applies, I think, to my category, or Charliee, our category. I think this one happens more, I think, in the kid book realms, or at least I've seen it a few times on some kid books.
Oh, I just read a romance novel, and not that I mind, because I'll read whatever. But the girl on the cover certainly looked and like looked not white. So I was just surprised when I read in it that she was. I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting that.
Well, and do you not go back to the cover? Like, wait a minute. Wait, no, it's not. No, you're
No,
not.
it took me.
I'm like, I don't care, but it just, because I wouldn't even think about it otherwise. Because I'm like, oh, this is a short romance, perfect. And the author had written something else that other people were liking, so I was like, well, this one's shorter. Let me go ahead and read this one first. The other one has 2 white people, so it's not like I only want to read. You know, it wasn't like that. It was just like it was just shorter. But when I saw the cover, I'm thinking one thing, and then I'm like, you know me with my hyperphantasia. I'm like, these things don't match. Let me look at the. Okay, it's not just me. Keep reading.
I haven't seen the problem personally, but kind of like with the other thing, it's like we're not like, don't rickroll people with how you're marketing your book.
Yeah. And I don't know how is
we're
that
gonna have angry
better?
readers.
Yeah, it may be picked up because people think that they're getting something that they're not. I think that's the way you see it. And if they pay for it, then, you know, they've already had it. But then you're going to be left with some awful reviews.
Yeah.
I
heard it was really bad.
Yeah, to me, this is like the thing with Hermione Granger and how some people thought that she wasn't white. And there was that whole confusion and how, like, the conversation that we had, I think, last time about Rick Riordan and stuff over there. But another thing is, what's Sarah J. Maas? I didn't realize that any of her characters were like
not white
because even though she said like, oh, this person has black hair, I'm like, yes, but every character who has black hair is always considered white in these stories, which I thought was interesting.
It's like if you hear black hair, that means nothing to me. Like if you capitalize black, obviously that means something. But if you say the person has black hair, I'm like, did they dye it?
Especially in fantasy.
Part of like the fantasy character that people can have black hair? Is this like Ben Barnes with black hair and Shadow and Bone, or is it black hair because everyone assumes that all Asian people have actual black hair, even though my hair technically counts as dark brown?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like black hair. First of all, okay, it's a color and it means it's on their head, but that tells me nothing about the rest of the person.
The same thing goes with tanned, because when I see the word tanned, I'm like, sunburn tan, like just normal tan, or are you trying to be kind by saying something else? In which case,
instead of being like they have yellow toned skin, in which case the assumption is like, oh, they're Asian, and then you're like, do you really have to?
Is that being used?
Yeah, but then
I've seen it in some places, and I'm like,
I've seen it too.
But also when they're like golden toned skin, and I'm like, like they were in the sun, or like
olive tone to describe Middle Eastern.
Yeah,
and then it transfers onto the book. then it transfers onto the book cover because you're saying, oh, the person's tanned, and then the person who's like, oh, your character's tanned, well, let's make them from the Middle East or something. And it's like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Well, it's also like, I think with Hermione, they really emphasize like the fact that she has not great teeth, which they obviously changed in the movie, and curly hair, which was like people kept being like her race isn't specified in books. Now I haven't read the books.
Curly hair doesn't specifically mean they're.
Oh no, absolutely not. I just don't remember if they actually do specify her skin color anywhere in the books because I haven't picked them up in forever. But I remember that people were pissed about Rue in the Hunger Games. And if you go back to that, it said she has brown skin.
Yep.
Oh.
And it was like, your racism is showing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So many times it's like they don't mind if, you know what, we're not going to go there.
So
I'm like, no,
I think with this, it's just be clear when you're, if you have control of it, be clear to your editors and your book designers, or use better terminology.
Well, at the very least, like, okay, if you're going to describe it like vaguely, unfortunately, BIPOC readers have been like, great, like same as everything. We've adapted. It's like we roll our eyes and we keep going.
It's the norm.
But if you know that your character is not a certain race, do not let your publisher put that on the cover.
Yeah.
And if you're self-publishing,
definitely.
do not
Don't
roll
put
your
that on the
audience.
cover.
So the book that, because it was more than just skin color for this book, but the book that really in the last few weeks or last couple months that blew it up was a book called My Killer Vacation. So if you guys want to go look up the cover.
Or Blue Spangled Blue, I think, was another one from a few years ago, 1 or 2 seasons ago. That's the one I read.
Yeah. And so, yeah. But I know if you look that up and look at the guy does not look like that.
I have an idea. Could BIPOC authors start writing white people and describing us as food? Like, for example, white as mashed potatoes, or like
mayonnaise.
Unseasoned mashed potatoes without the seasons.
No.
mayonnaise, vanilla ice cream. Like, you know, like maybe do that, and maybe if we have to read that a few times, we're gonna go.
Well,
you know what? It's not.
You know,
this is fun.
it's because
The outrage will be the outrage.
Oh my god, the white rage.
That will be. It's like.
I think it's because the only one that I've read that I think that they would be okay with. And do you know how the milky white skin, if it's like that in historical fiction, they're milky white skin, then they're like, oh, that's fine. But
it always makes me cringe. I don't care what race it's on.
I'm dairy intolerant.
Leave food out of this. And also, though, it's like when men got outraged that women started like sexually objectifying them, like in their writing, because men will write a woman and be like, "This is how she looks," and you're like, does that have anything to do with what's happening? No.
But also, if you look in a lot of there's a lot of craft books when they do the description books, and they use food as a lot of the descriptions in there as well. They give you the foods caramel color. Yes, I'm also often described as caramel color. Like,
you know what?
Delicious doesn't apply to a person.
Unless you're writing erotica.
I don't know. I think delicious might depend on the genre. There might be some genres where they blend.
No, I'm calling caramel delicious. I'm saying it should not be used to describe a person.
Right.
Well, you heard it here first. I want to hear milk bottle skin. What was Eva's? Eva's with a soft mayo toned skin glisten to the sun, sour cream. I want to see all this in books in the next few years. Pink grapefruit. That makes me think of my puppy. Okay, so now remind me before we run out of time, what was our fourth thing? Because what was the fourth one? Was that sensitivity readers?
Yes.
Yes.
Stop not hiring sensitivity readers.
Well, and here's the thing. I'm just going to put it out there. I think what her point was, because I know the self-publishers are like, I don't have to pay for it. And I get it. And here's the thing. Then take the licks. I think we've said this on here over and over and over again. You don't want to do the sensitivity readers? Cool. Then take the licks you get.
Hold up,
when people come at you like, why did you write this? And this is really horrible and this is horrible. They'll be like, I didn't know. That's what you said. I'm like, you knew that and you didn't want to ask. You just wanted to write it anyway.
you know.
The year is what
Color of a
the
Band-Aid.
year is what makes me laugh a lot.
Those were bad though.
Yeah.
Or the slap bracelets. Saw one of those the other day and was like, nearly stopped a kid to be like, where did you get that? He'd have been like the roller rink, like everybody else.
Evangeline said raw chicken is so accurate, though.
No.
It's true. It's funny because it's true.
Or really well cooked chicken, which is white.
That's true.
Oh, that is true.
That's true too. Or pork.
But what, so would you like to be a live chicken or like a cooked one?
Either way, we're gonna offend somebody.
Either way,
How
it's
dare
a
you.
white
I'm always
person.
going to be offended.
It's either a white person who glows in the dark, which is cooked chicken, or raw chicken, where it's like, did you get sunburned recently?
Raw
Oh,
chicken,
no.
Richard. Bless. And
Live
Eva's with the,
Richard.
I'm gonna wake up in the middle of the night thinking about that mayo
White
skin
sauce.
glistening in the sun.
But not the Band-Aid from 1984.
I'm trying to just keep that whole year out of my mind. It was tough back then.
Yeah, I love how the topics just blended together because get some sensitivity readers to tell you not to call people food. And you're just great.
There's a video on my YouTube channel back from I don't remember what year, but it was Keelan Rivers' Authortube virtual retreat, and I had her and Shanice Littlejohn on, and we were talking about sensitivity readers. And also, just because you get one person to do a sensitivity read doesn't mean they're the be all end all, because people are different.
We are not a monolith.
Right.
I recently saw a musical that my friend is producing, and it's about Thai people and an American in Thailand, and basically like some some political faux pas that happen. Let's just put it that way. When they're in Japan as well. And there's a song that is very westernized that talks about Japan becoming more westernized before they kind of swung the other way. And the entire cast is Asian except the American woman, which was like super cool because I was like, oh, look, people who look like me are the performers. And then you look at the executive side of the table and like everyone was white. And I was like, well, we'll get there eventually. But a lot of the cast were offended by certain things that were in the show. And then my friend who's the producer who's white was like, so what did you think? And I was like, yeah, that shit's offensive. Also, though, like we're in this time and I've dealt with all that shit myself. So like it's offensive, but it's true to the time.
Yeah.
And it is a historical romance. It's not a fantasy thing where, oh, there's representation, but there are no problems that existed in history or still exist today. Right. So I told him, I was like, yeah, that's offensive, but it's a lot better than some other musicals where there's just offensive things for no reason.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, Eva. I couldn't. I saw it and it made me giggle.
Just I was talking about the other one, the stop being shocked when you get opinion of living with, and pay them.
Yeah, definitely pay them. We talked about that in the live stream on my channel. You could just search sensitivity on my channel and you'll find it.
Yeah, it's also not new. I mean, I say this over and over and over again. Like, at least in traditional publishing, they have paid people to read books for years and years and years. Now, were they good at it or hire the right people? No. However, it's been going on a long time. It's not brand new. It's like this whole new uproar feels very put upon and false.
Also, most of traditional publishing is white, and I had to do a bunch of research for the formation of my company because it used to just be an idea for my final school project in grad school. Publishing hasn't gotten more diverse in 4 years, unless you look at the interns, where it's become less straight, less white, and less gender binary identifying. And they all leave like very quickly because it's still a hostile environment. So no one is getting, that's not true. Some people stick around long enough to get hired, and that's great. But a lot of the times, even if diverse people are getting hired in publishing, they're not making it to the important decision-making levels. So I would not expect any of the big four to be making the proper changes anytime soon.
Yeah. And here's the thing. If you do hire sensitivity readers, and if you're trying your best, if you've done the research and you hire sensitivity readers, and because we're not a monolith, some people might still be like, I didn't like this, and you can apologize, and then if they ask, you can say, yes, I did hire a sensitivity reader, but I'm still sorry that this came across or just if you have, because you never want to say I'm sorry, you're offended, but you do want to say I was trying, and I'm
never
sorry.
say I'm sorry you got hurt by my action.
Don't do it the backwards way. Just say I'm sorry, and then you can let them know I did try to hire sensitivity readers. I understand that some things are going to be okay with some people and not others, but I'm still learning. Blah blah blah. And I think for a lot of people, if they see that you're trying and you're actually doing your due diligence, it's a lot different than saying, well, that sounded good to me, or I heard a long time ago.
Right.
Yeah, and at the same time as everyone has different opinions, you also have to note that if the majority of them agree on the same opinion, it's probably bad, and that the idea that every reading thing is subjective does not mean that it's okay not to have sensitivity readers at all, because you by not having them, you take away that chance of actually knowing if something is wrong or isn't.
Yes, words of wisdom.
Yeah, and you have to trust when you see those trends coming up in your sensitivity readers. Everyone's basically saying the same thing. Then it's a thing.
It's a thing.
And you shouldn't be denying it or anything.
Yeah, and for me, if I had 4 sensitivity readers and they were split on something,
yes,
I would probably adjust it just in case. And I'd ask the ones that were found it offensive or odd, what can I do? Because these other 2 are saying it's fine. What can I do to make it better? Because the other ones are saying it's fine. You know what I mean? But if you're hiring sensitivity readers or your beta readers are doing it for you, then you should trust them.
I will also say, though, that you shouldn't, before we get to AF Stewart's comment, while a lot of marginalized identities, if they are your beta readers, will call stuff out because they want the story to be good.
Or point it out, or just say
but you shouldn't expect them to do that, because that's not
their job.
It's not their job, and it's also emotional labor, and often traumatic emotional labor that would then be going unpaid, which is why it's like, okay, they might point some stuff out, but they're not going to go through with a fine-tooth comb and do that, even if you're like, hey, because when I ask alpha readers, I'm like, hey, where do I not describe things enough? Even if I put that as my directive, where it's like, hey, I want to make sure that I'm accurately representing X, Y, and Z, they're not necessarily going to put their 110% into that, because that could be upsetting for them. And then you can't go back and be like, hey, you left me out to dry because you didn't mention this. And it's like, well, that wasn't.
I'll be like, I skipped over that part because I didn't like it.
And that dovetails to Anita's point, I think, which is true and fair. And you're right about that.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think what we need to start doing is getting used to the fact that if you are self-publishing, you need to have this as an expense. Not an additional expense, but as the same for an
in the budget, the same way that you're normal editing and a book cover, hopefully.
Yeah.
And in how do we feel about that in circumstances where it's like your main character might be a not lived experience, or it could be, when we're thinking about that for self-pubbed authors, what do those lines look like?
I think if it's an unnamed character and they're not like just a cardboard cutout of whatever stereotype that has been in Hollywood, and people can recognize that it's a stereotype from a mile away, I don't think you need a sensitivity reader if they're like an extra in a movie type of thing. But I think if they're a side character, or definitely like an important main character, even if it's like a group of people, you need a sensitivity reader. And I think
I'd also like to chime in with your question, Barrett, because I think also that's where Authortube comes in. You know, because with Authortube, you can build, there's a community, you can build connections with other people you click with, and you can trade stories. You can say, I'll want to beta read mine, I'll beta read yours, and then it takes the expense out of that.
Well, and how do we feel about a service exchange? What if a white author who's self-pubbing wanted to get some sensitivity readers? How do we feel about service exchange? Like, hey, maybe I do some editing for you, or I do some graphic design for you, or does that count as Could we count that as like payment?
I think
both parties.
I think it could, and I think that's up to the people doing it. But to me, I would be like, as much as I love your art, that is not enough for the emotional trauma that I'm going to be going through to make sure your story is okay, at least by my standards.
It would have to be a situation where someone's like, I will sensitivity read under this in this category for somebody. You know, okay, this person said that they're willing to do that. Somebody else might say, I'm willing to, if I can get a sensitivity reader for this, I'm willing to do X number of words of editing, so that, you know, you're not just going up to random, hey, GC, you had this trauma. Can you read this for me? And Jason's like, what?
But see, I don't have this.
I'm just saying, as an example.
I think this, though, and I don't want to like bring this this part of the live stream forever along, Nia, so you can cut me off if you need to. Okay. But I do think this gets into the question of, is bad representation better than no representation?
Oof.
I don't know. Like on transgender character, and I'm not the one to speak to this. We would be better to have someone else talk about this. But at least the thing that comes to mind immediately is transgender characters, mainly in thrillers in the 1990s and 80s that I came up reading.
Where men pretend to be women and then they're
usually murderers.
The killer. Yeah,
usually murderers, and it was pretty bad. So and then
J.K. Rowling's
that then became bigger. So, you know, I don't know. So I don't know. That's hard. I don't know.
I would say it really. Oh goodness. I would say it depends on a few things, like, because I think that some people will use that. I'm not saying A.R. Stewart's doing this, but some people will use that as an excuse, like, I don't have to diversify my book because I don't have the time or the money, or can't do the whatever it is. I can't do this thing that needs to be done, so I'm just gonna make all of the people one thing in my book. So if someone needs that as an excuse, then you didn't want to write them anyway. I'd rather you not write them. If it's really a genuine concern, like I really can't afford this, or I don't know the right people, network a little bit harder, because I like reading diverse books, and I don't need the trauma of whatever the BIPOC character, their marginalization is, of any person. I don't need their trauma to be front and center. I like the idea of let everybody just go on the adventure. So if that's all you're doing, to me, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah. If you're going to add something in, then I want to say ask somebody. I feel like we know, but it's because we're here on Authortube. I'm like, someone can help guide you. But if you're really writing a main character and you want to add some things, like if you've got one of your characters, their parents came from Kenya, and you want to add some of the things, like that you go to their house for dinner or something like that, you're middle schoolers, and you want to add some things in, I feel like, you need to find out and make sure you're doing things right. If your one of your main characters is Filipino, or maybe they're Puerto Rican, you want to ask, you want to know to make sure that you're getting things right. That doesn't mean eliminate these people from the books, because we love diverse, or I know I love diversity. Yeah. I'm more likely to pick something up if I know it is diverse. And when I say diverse, I don't mean eliminate the white people. That is not what I mean. Include I like the more inclusive, the better to me.
Yeah. But at the same time, I'm also kind of like, are your characters really that interchangeable that you can just switch up how they look? Like, I'm not talking about like histories and stuff. I'm talking about plainly like things like, oh yeah, your character had short hair, now your character doesn't have short hair, or something like that, because or something like it. To me, those are things like if your character is that interchangeable, then is that really a character you want in your story? Because in terms of plot, to me, if you can get rid of a character that easy, then you never needed that character in the first place. And I know that's different from brainstorming your project in advance, but as someone who is a planster, I know I need sensitivity readers, not because of BIPOC issues, but because I'm writing a character who is 3 times my age. So I want like the sensitivity reader to tell me if that is an accurate portrayal of that age. But like I couldn't get rid of that person because that person is integral to my character's life. So to change her age, to me, that's kind of like that changes the entire relationship. So I'd have to go back and rewrite the book. And that to me is more work than trying to think up and like, yeah, it's so much work. It's just easier to get sensitivity readers.
I think letting that kill stories. I think if you can't write a story without like being offensive and you know that you're being offensive, I don't think you should be writing that story.
Yeah.
I think that story deserves to get killed. Honestly. Like I agree. Like I want representation, and if they're like a group of people and you know you're not going super deep into like the different backgrounds of the characters first. I mean, I agree with Charlie where I'd be like, if you're going to have diverse characters, like show that, even if it's, and I don't want all their trauma showcased all the time, which is what my publishing company is, but I don't want bad representation. Like I have dealt with bad representation on both ends of being Asian in America my entire life. I'm not Asian enough because I grew up in an all-white family. I'm like too Asian to exist in an all-white Jewish family, at least to outsiders. And like my family doesn't do that, but you know, there are certain things that I get on the street that they will never get because I look and am Asian. And I don't want to have the like China doll stereotype perpetuated the same way I don't want the dragon lady perpetuated. I've been pigeonholed as both. They both suck for different reasons. You know, like it's great that Crazy Rich Asians came out and it's like they can be the stars of the show. That, you know, there can be an attractive Asian hunk on screen and he's not the butt of a joke and he's not like non-sexual because he's Asian. How could he ever be considered desirable? But they have the Asian in America problem and everyone glosses over that because they don't get it, but it's real and at least they did it well. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't want her to like, I mean, if Rachel existed and they never went into that, I'd be like, I feel like there's a missed opportunity, but at least she's like not a complete stereotype. Right. So I'd be happy. But yeah, if you can't write a story non-problematically and you know it's problematic, you should not be writing that story.
Yeah. That's why I'm like, in those cases, then yeah, I'd rather you just not include them. Just don't.
Yeah.
Because I'd rather that than for you or anyone to be harmful. Just don't include it.
100. And I'd say to Anita's point, because I see what you're saying, and Anita is AF Stewart. So when I'm saying Anita, that's who AF Stewart is.
Yeah.
So Anita, so as far as the not offensive, the fact can't afford sensitivity readers to check the representation is killing the stories. To what I would say to that one, at least from where I sit, going back to what Michael said, we brought our own very hot Asian man today. You're welcome. There it is. But Michael was saying go to Authortubers. And here's the thing. I think if you're wondering about it, reach out and ask folks and explain what your story is about and then let them decide their level of interest in some sort of a service exchange or something you can offer. I would say just don't go in empty-handed and ask someone to do the work is all we're trying to say. And I think if there is a will, there's a way. And so if you think there's anything that so for instance, for me, if I were writing in my story that I just drafted has a transgender character. So I know no matter what, I'm going to have some readers, even before I query it, read that for me. And if I couldn't afford it, I would definitely be going to them with some kind of an exchange and saying, here's what my story is about. Here's what it deals with. Do you think this is something you'd be interested in working on an exchange with me on? And then see if there's a way that way. So I wouldn't just assume that there's no way to get it done if you really, if you're worried about it. is what I'd say.
Yeah.
And thank you for being worried about it.
Yeah.
Just the fact that anybody would say like, hey, I think this is a problem. Thank you. Appreciate
Yes.
it.
Exactly. And when you're in your writing groups, or if you're in one of the Authortube groups, and you're putting it out, you can put it out there that way. Put it out there in a way that they can view. Like, this is what I need. That way, you're not just asking if whatever the marginalized person is, you're not going to that individual unless they've already said that they would do it. Say, if you've got your group of people that you trust. I'm so sorry, Loki. No. He's got a lot to say about this. But if you've got your group of people that you trust, just put it out there. I need someone to read for this if anybody's willing. And then they can come to you and say, yeah, I'm willing to do that.
Yeah. And Richard, that's a pretty good approach. I think you're pretty good there. To the guy who wants someone to date, I'm no longer single. I'm sorry, sir.
I was about to say, I think we got a little bot going.
I saw that and I was like, is this spam or is this person making a joke?
Yeah,
We're
I think
talking
it's
about
spam.
attractive people as being represented.
Yes, it was around the time I mentioned Michael. So
I know.
Sounds like a riddle to me.
The heat.
Yeah.
Is that Loki?
Yeah, it is. He actually wants to get up, and I'm trying to not. So, yeah, Mr.
Saving that for the Twitch stream.
I know. Come here.
Exactly.
Hi, everybody. So yeah, we've got just a
Loki.
few minutes before we've got to be on Twitch. So our next subject, we are going to talk about Jen Moressi's lies that we were told when we came into the writing community. So if you guys want to join in on the conversation, that will be the next episode, and we will be recording that live over on Twitch at 6:35 Eastern. So let everybody do quick outros. Thank you guys so much for the good conversation. Good conversation. We had some fun. We had some laughs, and we also hopefully got just let people know, how things are for if you're different from, other people, how, sometimes the things that we say or do, how they come across, and just to be more aware. It's never harmful to be more aware. Sorry, Loki is totally distracting me, and I'm trying to do this, and it's not working. So let's go ahead and do outros. We'll start with Zara. Go ahead and let the people know where you can be found.
Sure. Hi, I'm Zara Hoffman. I'm the self-published author of 6 books, a young adult paranormal romance trilogy and a new adult sci-fi romance trilogy. I am a Ko-fi ambassador, so my Ko-fi page is the best place to find me, support me, including buying signed paperbacks of my books. You can also hire me for author services. Sensitivity reading is not one of those options because I already have enough to deal with in therapy. And I am the co-creator, co-host, and editor of the Writers Podcast with fellow Authortuber Kelly Wright. And lastly, I am the publisher of Inimitable Books, which is dedicated to uplifting marginalized voices without forcing said authors to spotlight and exploit their trauma in order to tell this story.
Hear, hear.
Happy graduation.
Thank you.
Yeah, also, yeah, totally.
My name is Charliee. I am a YA fantasy writer, and I post videos on YouTube about writing and journaling. I also have Instagram and Twitter, but those are barely used, so we'll just leave it at that.
And hi, I'm Michael, totally. And yeah, I do the normal live streaming things here on Authortube. I've had a really good time with this, and I'm super looking forward to part 2, so to speak. Thank you.
Hi, I'm author JC Carpenter. I have a channel. I do writerly things. I have different. I really should get better at this. I have a blog. I have an online magazine. I have an online store. I have a masterclass series on my channel. I do a lot of things. Not these days. I'm lack of productivity these days, but usually I do a lot of things. Barrett, please save me.
I was riding the train with you. Hi, everybody. My name is Barrett Laurie. I'm too tired to outro. I love you all. I'll see you on Twitch. I'm gonna go get water and a coffee.
Darn, I didn't know that was
Totally messed up my stalling there.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I was like, I'll see you all on Twitch in a few minutes, where I will do this again and have more energy.
Thank you guys, and you're on my channel. I am Nia, the Vixen of Fiction, here on YouTube, Twitch, and Instagram. I also have a Ko-fi. I am a Loki mom and a mama 4. I write historical fiction, sci-fi, and other stuff. I'm a genre hopper. I just lost it. Like I had them. Like I'm on a roll. No.
That's all of us today, I think.
Adaptions.
Yes, scripting the book we're doing next Sunday, The Devil Wears Prada. So if you want to join us for that, we're going to have a great discussion. I just started the book, and I wanted to read the book before I watched the adaptation again because I've seen it a few times. And I'm like, I'm digging this. So
I'm just going to tell you that my professor in my publishing program, who is from the publishing house of Devil Wears Prada, was like, the book is not that great. So if it goes downhill, just say
no.
It could be great to you.
Yeah, no, I hope you consider it great. But my teacher was like, oof.
It's trash.
Oh no. Oh no.
Maybe I'll listen to that as an audiobook.
Well, I'm into it.
And we've come full circle.
You've accepted your defeat.
There we go. No, I'm like, I'm in the first 2 chapters and I'm like,
Okay. I'm sorry I said anything.
I'm like,
I'm
sorry.
I just started it.
If it makes you feel any better,
about you.
I really loved the book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. There's the
I
balance.
may have
All right,
only
so now I
known
don't
that
know.
the book existed 5 seconds ago, but I loved it anyway.
I love Charliee.
Oh my god.
Like, you don't expect it, and then there it is.
What was that, guys? I love you, Charlie.
That was classic. I love it.
You guys, we could give the View a run for their money. Like,
Totally.
I'm just saying.
We don't have problematic hosts like
Thank
They
you.
don't anymore.
Oh,
Currently.
my
I never
goodness.
bothered to check
that
back in.
book.
Let me pop in if you guys want to go over and hang out over on Twitch for us for a little bit. There's my Twitch channel. You guys can go over there, and we are going to close this out and take a little break, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Guys, bye.
Bye bye.